Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going on a fascinating and, frankly, a slightly unnerving philosophical journey. We're looking at a radical shift in how we view ambition, success, and the whole concept of personal expansion. We're constantly told to push our limits, right? To hustle, to be relentless. But what if the very thing we've been taught to revere is actually a blueprint for our own undoing? Let's get right into it.
So is growth always a good thing? I mean, it feels almost heretical to even ask that in our modern culture, doesn't it? We have this deeply ingrained assumption that limitless growth and relentless achievement are just inherently virtuous. We build our economies, our careers, and even our personal development goals around this single, unquestioned premise that more is absolutely always better. But we really need to hit pause and seriously examine this assumption.
Okay, let's dive into this. This incredible quote comes from Anthony DeMello. In this particular story, an economist is laying out a grand theory of development that rests entirely on the premise that growth is good in itself. The master simply listens and then asks this quiet, devastating question. Isn't that the thinking of the cancer cell? Once you hear that, it kind of shatters the illusion, doesn't it? It forces us to entirely reframe the concept of growth as something that is just good by default.
Now notice how perfectly this biological metaphor anchors our understanding of human ambition. A cancer cell doesn't fail to grow. It's incredibly successful at growing. What it fails at is literally everything else. It fails at knowing when to stop. It fails at serving the larger body it lives in. It simply cannot distinguish its own endless expansion from the actual health of the whole organism. And this is the exact danger available to any human life that is organized entirely around producing more capacity without any governing direction or ultimate purpose.
So how does this contrast with a healthy kind of ambition? On one hand, we have unbounded ambition. This is the pathology of limitless self-improvement, where you just want more output and more capacity for its own sake. On the other hand, we have directed growth. When we hear that there is no limit to self-improvement, we really have to ask some critical questions. Sure, capacity is a state of mind, but capacity for what? And answering to whom? Because without a specific purpose, you're just mimicking the biology of a disease.
Section 1. The Size of a Life. Why getting everything is a curse.
We tend to read the first part of this quote, "You can't have everything," as a statement about scarcity. It feels like a limit imposed on us by an unfair universe, right? But the companion line reveals something much deeper. It's a curse to get everything you want. We really need to unpack this paradox. This isn't just passive resignation to limits, it's the vital recognition that limits are exactly what make a life, rather than just a sprawling, chaotic mess. Remember, a cancer cell has absolutely no limits, and that is precisely its pathology, not its vitality.
So how do we actually grow in a healthy way? Consider this beautiful thought from Josie Bissett. Dreams come a size too big so we can grow into them. An oversized dream is incredibly generous, but notice the crucial difference here. It has a fixed direction. This is not unbounded growth, it is growth that has been given a shape. You can't reach a specific dream by accident or by aimlessly drifting around. That fixed direction is exactly what separates a life that is actively stretching towards something meaningful from a cell that is simply spreading in all directions.
Section 2. The Daily Battlefield. Fighting the Inner War of Complacency. Okay, we are dropping from high-minded philosophy straight into the embarrassing ordinariness of your daily habits. Where does real discipline actually start? Well, often, it starts with something as simple as whether you go to bed on time. It's that quiet, do as I say, not as I do hypocrisy of enforcing strict bedtimes for your kids while completely ignoring your own. And let's be real, that hypocrisy is deeply sensed by the people watching you, even if it's never spoken aloud. This mundane, nightly decision is where the reality of your growth is truly forged. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer framed sleep perfectly. He called it the interest we have to pay on the capital which is called in at death. Think about that for a second. When you routinely break your own sleep discipline, you aren't just being a night owl. You are taking on a compounding debt against yourself. Deferring rest represents a fundamental failure of daily discipline. It's a tiny, seemingly insignificant choice that actually dictates the entire trajectory of your larger ambitions.
So, the crucial point is this. Your nightly sleep habits and your grandest life ambitions are not two separate topics. As author Stephen Pressfield powerfully puts it, the inner game is a constant struggle against self-sabotage. It's a war, baby, and war is hell. These battles are fought at different scales. One is nightly and mundane, the other is constant, hourly, and existential. But both are decided not by how you happen to feel in the moment, but by what you actually, physically do.
If you lose that daily war, what takes over? Aesop gives us the sharpest warning here. Don't let your values get swallowed up by the great chewing complacency. Complacency is the absolute true enemy of a directed life. It is the human equivalent of the cancer cell. It's motion that has completely stopped answering to any purpose beyond just keeping the motion going. It happens when your target quietly disappears and nobody even notices for a long time.
Compare these two states. We spend so much time absolutely terrified of failure, but failure just means you missed the target. It implies you are at least striving for a specific goal. Complacency is infinitely more dangerous because the target has vanished entirely. You're just drifting. You are growing, perhaps, but without any direction, just spreading, unchallenged and completely unmoored.
Complacency is incredibly sneaky because it almost always wears the disguise of circumstance. But thinkers like Jim Rohn and strength coaches like Mark Rippetoe, they strip away that disguise entirely. They point out that finding an excuse is ultimately just a test and failure of your own will. If you want it, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. The excuse finder is just someone who has failed to keep striving. The people we should measure ourselves against aren't the proudly accomplished who have already stopped. We should measure ourselves against the strivers who are still actively fighting that daily, hourly war.
Section 3. Strict inside, tolerant outside. The pivot to empathy.
Now that we've talked about this intense inner war, we draw here from Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom, which intentionally widens our lens. This passage of Islamic wisdom reminds us that while we must be fiercely disciplined in our own truth, we must hold total respect for the different paths of others. True discipline doesn't result in toxic outward judgment or self-righteousness. It results in a profound empathetic respect for the varied struggles of your fellow human beings.
And this brilliantly illustrates the essential dual nature of a directed life. On one hand, we have inner strictness, that intense war against your own drift toward comfort, your own excuses, your own complacency. But on the other hand, we need outward generosity. The exact same golden rule that governs your inward fight demands that you do not turn your personal discipline into a weapon to judge someone else's path. Your inner battle shouldn't generate arrogance, it should generate boundless patience for others.
Section 4. Closing the loop. The Ordinary Tuesday.
Get up, dress up, show up, never give up, no matter how you feel. In the context of everything we've just discussed, this isn't just a cheesy motivational poster, right? This simple checklist is the ultimate daily manifestation of bounded, disciplined, directed growth. It's holding on to a dream that's a size too big, fighting the inner war again today, enforcing the nightly bedtime, all without forgetting what your effort is actually for.
We are constantly choosing between these two paths. Path 1 is filtered. It uses daily discipline to create directed growth, and it pairs that internal strictness with outward tolerance. Path 2 is unfiltered. It is the path of the cancer cell, unguided ambition, spreading in all directions, inevitably leading straight into the jaws of the great chewing complacency. The first path builds a meaningful life, the second just builds a sprawl.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We live in a world absolutely obsessed with building capacity. And yes, capacity is a state of mind. But you have to demand an answer from yourself. Capacity for what? What exactly is your target? Because if you don't define the shape of your growth, you might just find yourself succeeding perfectly at growing while failing at absolutely everything else. Think about that the next time you set a goal. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the next one.